Oh, thank you. And we have a Heidi Schmidt waiting. Does anyone know Heidi? Should we give her a chance?
I think I may have seen a Heidi the last few days.
Okay. All right. So we are reading from chapter 10. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. So we can all chant together. Bhuya eva mahabaho shinu me paramam vachaha yate ham priyamanaya vakshami hita kamyaya name vidu suragana prabhavam na maharshayaha aham madhyahi devanam maharshinam cha sarvashaha yomam majam nadim cha veti loka maheshwaram asamuda samartishu sarva papai pramuchate buddhir jnanam asamoha shama satyam dhamma shamaha sukam dukam bhavo bhavo bhayam cha bhayameva cha ahimsa samata tushtis tapodanam yasho yashaha bhavanti bhava bhutanam mataeva pitagvidaha Maharshaya sapta purve chatvado manavastata madbhava manasajata yesham loka ima pachaha. Okay, so that was verses 1 to 6, and we can read 7 as well. Etam vibhutam yogam cha mama yo veti tattvataha sovikalpena yogena yujyatena cha samshayaha. So Chinmoy Prabhu, do you want to read those translations for 1 to 7?
Okay. The Supreme Lord said, "O heroic Arjuna, listen to my supreme word once again. Desiring your welfare, I shall speak to you, who are very dear to me. Neither the demigods nor the great sages can understand my transcendental appearance in this world, as I alone am the origin of those celestial beings and sages. One who knows me, the son of Devaki, as the birthless, beginningless, supreme Lord of all beings, is undiluted among men and completely liberated from sin. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from delusion, forbearance, truthfulness, mental control, sense control, happiness, unhappiness, birth, death, fear, courage, nonviolence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy. All these various attributes of the living beings are born of me alone. The 7 great sages headed by Marichi, and preceding them, the 4 Brahmin sages headed by Sanaka, and also the 14 Manus or progenitors headed by Svayambhuva. All are empowered by me and are born of Lord Brahma, who is a manifestation of my mind. Mankind and progeny descends from these patriarchs. One who thus knows in truth my supremacy and devotional services serves me in unwavering realization. Of this there is no doubt.
Very nice. Anyone have any comments on these verses we've just read? Or specific questions?
I actually, just this always is difficult for me to understand. Number 3, one who knows me is undiluted among men and completely liberated from sin. I mean, I know this, but I'm definitely not completely liberated from sin. So how should we adjust? How should we harmonize that?
Well, what would your answer be?
I guess this knows Betty. I I mean, that's the same one of that famous verse, one who knows this knows everything, one who attains this attains everything. So I guess it's a particular type of knowing, not just like it's in my brain type knowing.
Right. There's theoretical knowing and there's realization, right? Realization knowing. Head knowing and heart knowing, I see. Maria's put in the chat. It's nice. Yeah, I mean, we could also say that if we have this understanding, then we're on the right track, right? Could also say. And sometimes things are also expressed to make a point, right? Because what's being emphasized here is the transcendental nature of the Lord. You know, and I'm reminded of this famous verse in chapter 4. Actually, I never made that connection, but it's quite interesting. They're very similar. This is a well-known verse. I think you probably know this verse. Is Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yoveti Tatvataha. Let me see where is that verse? I thought I just found it. Yeah, it's chapter 9 verse 9 of chapter 4, this very well-known verse. Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yoveti, the same word Veti, Tatvataha. This Tatvataha is also used in one of these verses we just read, I believe. Tatvata, right? Truth. Where is it? Yeah, this is in verse 7. So it's kind of emphasized in this verse 3 and verse 7. Similar thing is being echoed there. I see your hand raised, Scarlett. We'll come to you right after this.
Okay, I can wait.
Okay, thank you. So this going back to this verse I'm mentioning in chapter 4, this Janma Karma, right? One who comes to know thus the truth of my pastimes of divine birth and activities does not undergo rebirth. After giving up this body, he attains me. And here it's saying, so my Janma, because this is the Aprakrita Leela of Krishna, right? The human-like play of the Lord, where he's appearing to be as an ordinary human being, but he is not, right? So he has a birth. You know, apparently he's taking birth as an ordinary being. Karma, he has apparently ordinary activity that he's carrying out in this world. So it's very easy to think of him as mundane. However, if you can understand that to be divyam, you know, if you can understand the transcendental nature of such things, you know, then you will be liberated. I mean, I feel like there are different things going on here. One is that it's an expression, you could say, to really emphasize, you know, the divinity of the Lord. You know. And another is that, as was just being expressed, that there are different types of knowing, right? There's the theoretical knowing and there's the realization knowing. But the theoretical knowing is a start, right? It's a beginning. So we don't need to be too dismissive of that, right? Our gurus are giving us the proper conception. And at present, we may not have real substantial faith in that, but something is there. And clarifying our conception, that's helping to strengthen our faith also. So it's a beginning. Our Gurudev also drew out a very interesting point in regards to this verse in chapter 4. And it's the same idea is being echoed here in chapter 10, this, right, Tatvataha. Gurudev drew out this point. So this Tatvataha, right, is being translated here as like the reality, the truth. So Krishna is saying, one who can understand the reality of who I am, what is my true nature, they will be liberated. So Srila Govinda Maharaj, he made this, I came across it in one, I believe it was an article. He made this beautiful, no, it was a talk actually. It was a talk that I heard. He drew out this really beautiful point that he used this, he took this phrase and he used it in a broader sense, saying that we need to understand what is the essence of Krishna consciousness at every point, right? We don't, we hear these terms, Saragrahi and Bharavahi, right? Saragrahi is essence drinker. Saragrahi Vaishnava, right? They're essence drinkers. They're always taking the sar, they're always taking the essence. And then the opposite of that is Bharavahi, who means load carrier. They're just carrying the burden of so many external practices and formalities in religion, rituals. They're just carrying the load of that without actually connecting to the essence, to the real substance. Or Gurudev, he made this point in regards to this verse here. And he also gave a very wonderful example, that example of, many of you know, Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj, that occasion when he was out preaching, and he's embodying the spirit of Saraswati Thakur's Vaikuntha Ritti, right? This broad preaching style in order to in order to bring Krishna consciousness everywhere. Then sometimes there has to be some slackening of the strict adherence to the Vedic customs. And so we hear of this occasion, Bhakti Saranga Goswami is out on the preaching field, I believe somewhere near Kashmir. And they go to, there's no devotees in the area, so they go to take their meal at some local restaurant. And the food that they're served, it has some onions in it, right? And to us, that sounds like, oh, well, not such a big deal. But, for someone following a sattvic, brahminical lifestyle, that would have been a very big deal. That was sometimes considered almost like meat. When we were in Calcutta, we were like a group of 7. We were on our way out of Bengal and going back to Delhi for the flights home, and there were like 7 of us. We spent the night in a hotel, and so we had to find something to eat, and I like dosha, so I ordered a dosha, and I was happy with that. But everyone else wanted pizza, and so they ordered pizza. But Ananta Krishna went to order it, and he told them that he wanted pure veg. And so they left out the tomato sauce because it had garlic in it. So they were all so disappointed. They waited like an hour for this pizza, and it was just bread and cheese, basically. They left out the tomato sauce. It was pure veg, right? So it's almost considered like meat, even today, even now. So they're sitting there, they've received this vegetable, and then someone in the group is complaining, oh, there's onions in this, how can we eat this? And Bhakti Saranga Goswami, he says, you are seeing onions, I'm seeing Mahaprasad. I'm seeing Mahaprasad. So our Gurudev, because he's considering, right, we need to eat something. And Krishna has supplied this to us. This was his high vision. Krishna has supplied this to us. So this is the Lord's prasad. This is the Lord's grace. Maybe by material calculation, it's not completely pure, but it is the Lord's mercy. And so we will happily accept that as his prasad, his Mahaprasad. And that was his vision. So our Gurudev, he gave that example, speaking about this verse, verse 9 of chapter 4, this phrase, tattvataha, understanding the essence, understanding the reality, paramahamsa dharma, right? We can also go back to that idea. Paramahamsa Dharma, right? Like the swan who's taking the milk from the water. So in every situation, in every circumstance, in every person that we come across, we want to extract what is the essential thing here? What is the essential element? What is the spiritual element? So I think we can also draw out this broader idea, from these expressions here also in the beginning of the 10th chapter. We want our practice of Krishna consciousness to be in that line, not just stuck on the external side of things, What was that? You remember what it was, that example the other day with Gurudev? Was it yesterday? It was, oh yeah, yesterday we watched this wonderful video of Srila Gurudev. And I have to share, I don't know if you have these videos, Chinmoy, when Gurudev, when he was in Italy, his videos, maybe Madhurananda gave them to you. But there's this one, so this one is from Narni, 1999, Italy, Narni Castle. There's this amazing talk, Gurudev. And, but there's this one point where he's saying how someone in particular was criticizing our sannyasis, saying, oh, they haven't read this book. So how can they be considered real sannyasis, real monks of our line? They haven't studied such and such book. And our Gurudev was unhappy to hear that. And it was his disciple. And he countered him saying, oh, you studied this book. The book was the Govinda Bhashya, this particular commentary. You read this book, and what happened to you? Did you get 4 arms? The person who taught that book to you, did he become Chaturbhuj, get this Vishnu form with 4 arms, like, okay, like, there's this, it's a very ritualistic mentality that we come across and we find within ourselves, right? How many rounds have I chanted? What practices have I followed? Okay, this has its place, but more important is, like, is there some inner transformation that's taking place as a result? Like, are you practicing, like, what is the end result? Like, another time Gurudev made this wonderful comment, the result is existing within consciousness. That's the result. It's not how many rounds you chanted, but has your consciousness been elevated by one Krishna Nam, right? Ultimately, we want to chant one name of Krishna that is pure. Right? So what is that inner transformation taking place? That's the real question. This is Paramahamsa vision and Paramahamsa consideration. No, not what you did and what you didn't do, but is your heart moving? Is your heart changing? Are you growing? Are you evolving? That's the vision of the Paramahamsa. So there's that focus on the essence. What is the essence here? What is the essential thing here? That is the vision of the Paramahamsas. So those are some thoughts in regards to these verses, and no doubt so much more could be said. The only other thing I wanted to say here was I appreciate so much the affection that we see coming from the Lord towards Arjuna. It's like again and again, and here in this first verse, this Priya is being used, right? My beloved, my dear friend. He's always speaking to Arjuna in this sweet way, affectionate way, loving way. And in the same, and remember this whole conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, it's also, Arjuna is also, as we've discussed previously, we haven't found quite the right word yet. Right? Arjuna is something of a prop, right? Like Arjuna is representing all souls, right? Krishna is speaking to all of us through Arjuna. Right, there's Gangalila. You must be very jet lagged. You just arrived, right?
I have just arrived, and people were saying we had terrible weather and snow in California, and I got back, and yep, I got the blue sky and the sunshine, and I'm very jet lagged, and I'm so happy to see you, Vishaka Didi.
And happy to see you too, Gangalila. So, what were we saying?
You're talking about how Krishna is so affectionate to Arjuna,
Hmm.
and how the word.
Oh,
Yeah.
how Arjuna's actually also Krishna's instructions to Arjuna is representing his instruction to all souls, right? So as we're seeing this affection that Krishna's expressing in his instruction to Arjuna, he's also speaking to us. That affection is for us. The message of Bhagavad Gita is for Arjuna. Doesn't need these teachings, actually. Arjuna is an eternal associate of the Lord. He's a friend, one of Krishna's best friends. So this is for us. So we have to try to receive that, receive this affection, this affectionate instruction, affectionate guidance, right? This is one of our books. Scarlett, please, you've been waiting so patiently.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the wonderful class. In my understanding, in everything what I read in Shastras, in Srimad Bhagavatam and so on, not even demigods knows him, not even himself knows himself. And the reason that he came as Chaitanya was just to know himself, right? Have I understood it wrong?
I love it. I love it. Chinmoy
Have I
Guru,
understood it
what
right
did you
or
say
wrong?
to that?
In one
But-
sense, yeah, he wanted to discover what nectar, what ecstasy was within himself. So in one sense, you can say, yeah, he came to discover who he is. You can say that.
Yes. And even his wife, Rukmini, say to him, not even you know yourself. You know how effulgent you are. Not even you realize how effulgent you are. So even his wife says it. So I mean, if it's that way, that even demigod doesn't know him really, how could we then know him? You understand my question?
Yes, I mean, I think what you're saying is wonderful. Yes, absolutely. It's an infinite matter, right? It's infinite.
Yes. Mm.
It's an infinite. It is true that the Lord, especially in the pastimes of the Lord, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's exploring himself. So yes, it is an infinite matter.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other comments from anyone?
What does Paramahamsa Dharma mean?
What does Paramahamsa Dharma mean? Well, I was mentioning just there about the swan.
Mhm.
How the swan, we are told, takes, if you put milk and water mixed together, then the swan has this ability to just extract the milk, and to leave the water behind. And so the idea is that the Vaishnava, so the word Hamsa means swan, right? And so Param means great, supreme. So great swan, and so the great Vaishnavas are sometimes referred to in this way, because they have Paramahamsa, because they have this capacity to extract the essence right? They can leave behind what is non-essential, and they can extract what is essential. You know? So like as one of the examples I like to give a lot is of the way that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati adjusted the rules for Ekadashi, right? You know about that. That according to scripture, you're supposed to fast all day, even from water. But Saraswati Thakur is saying, well, hang on a second. The whole point of Ekadashi is to give more energy to Krishna, right? But if we're fasting all day, 9 out of 10 people won't be able to do very much. So therefore, let's follow Yukta Vairagya, right? Properly adjusted renunciation in devotion. So then we will fast half a day, and then we'll take anukalpa, means like fasting. We'll take lighter foods, right? So understanding what is the real point. The real point, Krishna's not interested in fasting. What is he going to do with that? He's interested in love. So understanding what is the essence. And then, it's a huge subject matter, actually, and it's a term which can be used in many different contexts, in our relationships with others, right? And the relationships that we cultivate, particularly with other practitioners, we're always trying to see what is the higher side, right? Everyone has their inspired spiritual side, their higher self, and everyone has their uninspired, their mundane, concocted self, right? That black box of ego that's been collecting information, and prejudices, false conceptions since time immemorial. Everyone's got both of these things going on, right? So we want to leave when we're interfacing with others, right? We want to ignore. We don't need to see the lower side, right? We're just seeing that brighter side. We there's that depiction, right, of those monkeys, right? See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, right? We don't need to see that. And we really don't need to see it because there's something beautiful there. And we also need to detect what is real beauty, not what is mundane beauty, but what is the spiritual beauty there? What is the spiritual quality there? And that example that I just gave, that's an example of Bhakti Sranga Goswami saying, I am seeing Mahaprasad, you're seeing Ani. That's also Paramahamsa mood, Paramahamsa. And so Paramahamsa Dharma means like the practice of applying these principles. And we have this, and this, Srila Govinda Maharaj, this was something he really embodied, and in fact, Srila Sridhar Maharaj described him. Srila Sridhar Maharaj once described him as a natural Paramahamsa. That was one of the praises that Srila Sridhar Maharaj had. And I would say more so than the other great acharyas in recent history. He demonstrated that. Because Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he was coming like for the first time giving Krishna consciousness in the West, and he was dealing with hippies, right? So he had to really create a clean, strong foundation. It's the age of free love and whatever, drugs, was it rock and roll and sex and everything, right? There's an expression, I forget. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, that's it. That was the age, right, he was in. So he had to make a clean foundation. We also hear this expression, first learn the rules and then you can break them, right? So it's like Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he made a clear foundation for everyone. Like I heard one story, Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he was waiting, I think it was in France, and he was waiting for a taxi to come and take him somewhere. And he was standing on the curb, on a street, and And he's waiting for a little while, waiting for the car. And right next to him, there was a cafe which had outside chairs and tables. And so someone said, oh, Prabhupada, maybe you can sit here while you're waiting. And Srila Prabhupada refused. He said, oh, they're serving, alcohol and everything here, and I'm not going to sit there, Like very, very strict standard he was following. So he was made, that was for a reason, right? Time, place, circumstance. Try to follow a clean life. He's first showing the importance of that, right? And then Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he had some Brahminical samskar, right? Srila Sridhar Maharaj, the Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj, he had some Brahminical nature. And he, when Saraswati Thakur requested him to travel to London to preach, Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave two reasons why he didn't think he was the right person. One was that he said, I cannot follow their intonation. Srila Sridhar Maharaj's English, is better than the average Englishman, but he could not follow the accent so well. So he said, I'm not the right. And then the other reason he gave was he said that, I have my Brahmin nature and I cannot mix, like the Westerners are, they're doing all kinds of, impure things and impure habits. And it would be very difficult for me to mix it with them, eat at the same table, and so many habits they have will be very difficult for me. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he had this Brahmin nature. But Srila Govinda Maharaj, he was very free in that regard. At every point, Srila Govinda Maharaj was always acting according to the highest principles of devotion, which sometimes are going against the Vedic standards. Like for example, we hear of there's this one occasion, someone offers a cookie to our Gurudev, right? In the airport, he's on the way out. Some sincere devotee gives him a cookie and a wrapper, and our Gurudev is going to open it. And then someone goes over and whispers in his ear, oh, Gurudev, there's some ingredient in this cookie, it's not completely pure. Thinking our Gurudev is going to be so happy he's been saved, And our Gurudev looks at him and he says, Prabhu, I'm accepting the affection of the devotees. I'm accepting their affection. That was always like, that would hurt that devotee so much. Like, this is like the biggest moment of their life to offer this little cookie to our Gurudev. It would just break their heart, how much it would discourage them if our Guru says, oh no, this is impure, I can't take this, So he's not interested in that cookie, but he's taking the heart, the affection, he's encouraging them in their devotional life. So, and I always like to give that example, right? I think we mentioned it just yesterday or the day before about chocolate, right? That Gurudev tells everyone not to eat chocolate on Ekadashi, but to a particular Vaishnava who comes from this high Brahmin family and very attached to all these Brahminical things, our Gurudev's telling him, you have to eat chocolate on Ekadashi. So always dealing with the essence, Srila Govinda Maharaj always operated according to that. He always was acting according to the principles of Paramahamsa Dharma. And it's very nice, this point is mentioned in the Arati song, in our song of worship for Srila Govinda Maharaj. Stapila Shrama Bahu Jagatam Ashade Paramahamsa Dharma Gyan Shikshara Prachada. That you've established so many temples all over the world. For what purpose? In order to spread this Paramahamsa Dharma, to establish the practice of Paramahamsa Dharma. That's what these temples have been made for. Oh, and there are so many examples, of that. We're told, another simple example, we're told if you're going to worship the deity, you have to have a particular standard of cleanliness, right? But what if the pujari's gone missing? The offering is late, right? We have to feed the Lord. The Lord's a person, it's getting late. Maybe you're not so clean, but the Lord is hungry. Then we have to go and make the offering. Generally the ladies, they won't offer when they're menstruating, right? But our gurus have said, if there's no one else available, you need to serve the deity, you have to feed the deity, then you must do, right? It's practical. It is practical. I like Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he made that comment, like Krishna, maybe Vadana Rupini can say exactly, but it's like 90% common sense, right? There is some comment like that. The Krishna consciousness is 90% common sense. I appreciate that so much. There's the simplicity, practical, direct dealings. That's what Krishna consciousness is. Not some airy, fairy, remote thing, but practical, Nanda Kirma Karod Brahmam Shreya Eva Mahodayan Yashoda Va Mahabhaga Papa Yasya Sanam Hari. And what is that other one? Bharatam Anye Jantu Bhavata. There's this verse, Smritim Appare Smritim Itere Bharatam Anye Bhajanta Bhavata, saying that some persons, they worship this section of the scriptures, others worship this section of the scriptures, others are following the Mahabharata, and people are following so many rituals and so on. But as far as I'm concerned, I worship Nanda Maharaj. Why? Because that Param Brahma, that supreme absolute truth, who the yogis and the jnanis and the tapasvis, they're working so hard to get a glimpse of, he's playing in his backyard. So many yogis, right, going through so much austerity for so many lifetimes to get a glimpse of the Paramatma, right? So many tapasvis, so much austerity to get some touch of that higher thing. And the karmis are following so many rituals and practices and formalities and so on. But he's playing in the backyard of Nanda Maharaj. He's carrying his shoes on his head. I'll have what he's having. I wanna worship him. That's my religion. Well, he did something right. Obviously, he did something right. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, why should I follow so many like abstract and remote things when I'm told I can have it in such a direct and simple way? Why do I need to make it complicated when it doesn't need to be complicated? So this is Paramahamsa Dharma. Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I think it's in Shri Guru and His Grace, he gives that example of, there are two examples he gives, one of Napoleon and one of Alexander the Great. And I get them mixed up. And one is that they're told that, if someone can put this egg on a nail, they will become so great, they will conquer the world, right? And so, actually it's impossible, right, to stand an egg on a nail. So what is it that, Napoleon does? He goes and takes the egg and he just pushes it onto the nail. Like, problem solved. Okay, look, got a bit of the egg on the nail here. And the other one was this knot. I think that was Alexander the Great. And it's some very difficult, impossible knot to untie. So whoever can manage to untie this knot, they'll become great conqueror in the world or something like that. And so many people, brilliant minds, have tried and failed to untie this knot. So Alexander the Great, he just takes his sword, cuts through the rope, problem solved. Why do you need to play all these like complicated mental games? Like, let's just get to the point here. Like, what's actually needed? Let's keep it simple. This is Krishna consciousness. God will be your friend. God will come and knock on your door and say, will you come and play with me? You know, you take a bite of the apple and, oh, Krishna, please, will you taste this? This is Krishna consciousness, simple, direct, hearty dealings. There doesn't need to be all this intrigue and distance and awe and reverence and all these things, but right there, you're in your heart, next to you, by your side. This is Krishna consciousness. So then on our side, you know, how can we start to approach that plane? By being naked in our approach. Naked and authentic and no artifice. You know, no artifice. But straightforward, honest dealings and assessment of ourselves. And then we can start to make some progress towards that plane. I'm not sure how we got onto all of that. Nice topics.
Can I add something, Didi?
Please, Prabhu.
Because this just reminds me, is talking Paramahamsa, the Dharma, and seeing, you know, trying to see the essence within. I just recently heard Srila Sridhar Maharaj talk about how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Swami Prabhupada were form breakers, broke customs. You know, Saraswati Thakur, he broke from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Swami Prabhupada, he broke from, in certain ways, the customs established by Srila Saraswati Thakur. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj is saying it's necessary to see the spirit within. Because the spirit of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is the same spirit within Srila Swami Maharaj. He says, and we can see that with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, because the godbrothers, his godbrothers, all were criticizing Srila Swami Maharaj and were not accepting what he was doing. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj did, because he could see the spirit within and not the form.
Well, sorry, I think maybe I missed something in the beginning. Was this a question that came up to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, or was something Srila Sridhar Maharaj was just speaking on? He was inspired.
No, I can't remember exactly. I think it was somebody was bringing up, like, because I think he was talking about sannyasi names and how Srila Saraswati Thakur maybe differed from the Mayavadis, and also revolutionary behavior. And then it came to the topic of Srila Swami Maharaj also changing some things. And as you mentioned, time, place, and circumstance.
Right. Very nice. I don't know, Rupini raising her hand.
I remember this one story. I think it must have happened like in the 70s, you know, where in one certain temple, the devotees there were more quote unquote health conscious, you know, and they didn't want to make sweets with sugar for the deities. So they were using like honey or very little honey and, you know, not too much sugar and stuff. And I heard that when Srila Prabhupada went there and he had a sweet, he said, "What is this?" You know, and then he found out that they were trying to be health conscious and they were arguing with him about sugar. And they said, well, you know, they said, you know, sugar has to go through the bones of cows or something when it's being purified, you know, becoming sugar. And he said, in Kali Yuga, there's so much, you know, so much of this going on. He says, Krishna likes sugar. You might not, but you have to give Krishna his sugar. And they had to change, you know. So it's like, it's really amazing like that. And the other thing I was also thinking was like in the early days in New York, I read in one, you know, biography kind of thing that it said that there was a little sign next to the bathroom and everybody would line up to go to the bathroom and Srila Prabhupada would line up with everyone else to go to the bathroom. But there was a sign that says, today you can only have 2 cigarettes. Like it went down and down. Like today you can only have 1 cigarette until he got everybody off cigarettes. That to me was like, whoa, you know, he was so you know, he also got criticized for giving women Brahmin initiation, but
Mm.
I guess is an innovator. But also one last thing was one time, because I worked at the hospital for so long, and I was thinking, oh, well, what if I got into a car accident and I needed a blood transfusion, and all the blood is from non-devotees and they're eating meat and, really abominable stuff. And so I asked a high Vaishnav, Maharaj, I have a question. I said, if I was in a car accident and I needed blood to save my life, should I take it or should I not? Because there's so much impurities in that blood. There's, meat and all kinds of abominable stuff. And the answer that came back to me was, you have to do everything to save your life, because your life doesn't belong to you. It
Mm.
belongs to Krishna and your guru, and you have to serve Krishna. So whatever you have to do to save your life. And the story about the sage, there was a hunter, and I think it was Narada Muni who was in the forest, and he was like dehydrated, and there was this hunter with a pouch made out of leather with water, and he saw the sage, and the sage was dying from dehydration. So he's not supposed to accept anything from the hunter, but the hunter offered water. He took 2 scoops of water, and then the third one he said, no, that's okay, because he only took enough to save his life, not to have
Uh,
sex.
uh-huh.
It's a fine line, I think, like you
Mm.
said, Didi. It's time and circumstance and common sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very nice. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. Wonderful. Anyone else have any other comments to add? Chinmoy Fu, you look like you have something.
Well, it was Radha Rupini was saying that story about the cigarettes. It reminded me of the book of, I think, Jamuna Priya, and in that book, she would go have a cigarette and then she'd come in and like cook for Prabhupada and the deity. And Prabhupada said to her, "After you smoke, at least wash your hands, then cook." How merciful, like.
Yes, yes. Yes, I've heard you're reminding me. I've heard that in the beginning, Srila Sai Maharaj was very accommodating because they didn't know anything else, right? No. We have Heidi has her hand raised. Heidi, something you'd like to say?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I've been a part of the WhatsApp group for some time.
Hey.
Yeah, visited like Hare Krishna groups many times over the years.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I love the doctrine, and I was a part of Ananda Marga for a long time too.
Uh-huh.
So the sattvic diet. So this point, came to me in recent years after eating completely sattvic for decades. I felt that bone broth was healing for my stomach issues. So I was diagnosed with like 4 different stomach GI things. So the bone broth seems to be, soothing. And so what the sister was sharing, the guru drank just enough to save his life. But we also want to look at like, well, what about preventative health practices, So what happens when you see like maybe this will fortify someone's body as they're aging? What's your take or your experience and view on that?
See, I mean, the thing is, everything ultimately is vibration, right? And there's vibration surrounding everything. And, and there's mundane vibration and there's spiritual vibration, right? And actually, we are mundane. So everything we're contacting in this world, we can only contact mundane. And so the Bhagavad Gita talks about 3 different classifications of mundane vibration, right? And they're just, you probably know, it sounds like you're somewhat familiar with our teachings, right? Sattva, you mentioned sattvic lifestyle, right? So there's sattva, rajas, tamas, right? The energies of passion, ignorance, and goodness, right? And so everything, food, different activities, they can all be classified, right, according to these different vibrations. And actually, our interest is beyond all of these. We're interested in the Nirguna plane. Krishna's of a different category. There's sattva, goodness, and then there's Shuddha sattva, pure goodness. That is another category. And that's transcendental. And that can come and touch us regardless of how sattvic or non-sattvic we are, right? And our Gurudev, he tells this story, I believe it's in the Mahabharata, of this hunter, simple-hearted hunter, who came across a stone in the forest. And, oh, this will be a perfect weight to weigh my stone, right? And it's a way that my meat, in the scales. So he takes it to his shop and he's using it, right, daily to weigh his meat. And then there's a Brahmin who comes by one day and he's horrified. Oh, don't you know? Can't you recognize this is a Shalagram Shila? This is actually a Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu. Can't you see that? This is so offensive. And he takes it home. He worships him properly, he chants all the mantras, etc. And that night he has a dream. The Lord comes and says, oh, why did you take me away? I was having such a good time on that swing, please take me back. So, there was something in the heart of that materially impure hunter that moved the Lord. And he was attracted to that more than all the proper, perfect behavior of that Brahmin. So our Gurudev would tell this story to illustrate that flow of devotion is independent. And it's not interested in the mundane nature, whether good or bad. It is attracted to something else. And it can move in unexpected ways, right? So we understand that is the highest principle. However, at the same time, we are advised that more generally, it's helpful to try to follow the sattvic mode of life as much as possible, because that gives us a clean platform. That gives us a clean platform, which is the most supportive of our movement towards that nirguna plane, that transcendental plane. And we also feel some shyness to go beyond that, because we feel, oh, who are we, right? The feeling that many will have is, who am I to, it's better for me to follow the rules for the general people, right? And if I know that something is of a lower vibration, then it's a little risky for me. It could drag me down, right? So that is the general recommendation. And generally the feeling of the practitioners will be, oh, it is better I play it safe, right? But at the same time, we know that this higher principle is there. And if we feel we cannot follow the general ruling, then it's not the be all and end all. It's not the end of everything. So I don't have one answer for your question. It's, another point about Krishna consciousness is that, it's about our own inner heart cultivation, and what you're doing, you need to feel sincerely within your heart. I'm not here to tell anyone what's right or wrong, but we're exposing ourselves to the realizations, the feelings of the higher saints. We're informing ourselves of that, and we're trying to develop our own sense and to move forward.
Nice. Yeah, very nice explanation. Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Okay, what do you think? Okay, so everything is vibration. What do you think the effect is? Like, so onion and garlic, they can like make the mind, heated and hard to concentrate and things like that. So I wonder on the deeper level if anyone has been able to identify like what might be the effect of something like that, bone broth, like maybe it would even change the genetic code or my karmic path. Maybe I haven't transcended this kind of like tapas for, just like saying I'm, yeah, I don't see the deities and dadas and great teachers eating these foods for their health. They just surrender, they say, okay, maybe it would be, but I noticed this tamasic effect, so I'm gonna just accept that. So I wonder, maybe there's like a karmic it'll change. I'm concerned it will change my path. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's received any insight.
Radhana Rupini is raising her hand.
The thing about eating animals or anything with a mother, I always say anything with a mother, is that they, when they're slaughtered, they have fear in their heart. They have anxiety, fear, all of that is released into the body of the animal. And when we eat it, we absorb some of that. And which also bothers the mind and stuff. So that's only a very small part of the reason why we don't want to eat anything with a face or a mother. So, that's one thing. Another thing is the karmic, karmically. And somebody might say, well, plants also have feelings, and science has proven that plants can communicate. It's pretty cool. But in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that, we offer what we're going to take in to the Lord, and the Lord has certain things he will accept to take in. And so like one of them is not anything with a face or a mother. So that's one thing. But like, again, time, circumstance, and place. I had asked somebody, somebody more advanced one time, what if you're in the Antarctic, and you live in the somewhere and there's nothing but ice and people only eat whales, and you're gonna die if you don't eat something. What do you do? And they answered, well, you have to eat the whale because that's your situation you're in to save your life. There's nothing but ice everywhere. You have to. So, but we're so fortunate that we're not in that situation. So, so whenever we eat, in general, we say, dear Lord, please accept this as an offering. We try to offer it to Krishna or our spiritual master before we eat. And that way it's leftovers from the Lord, which sanctifies not only our body, but our soul. And that is so important. So that's, that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very nice, Radhana Rupini. Thank you. I'll just add on a few words to that, and then we are going over time. We can end maybe that. Yes, there we have to remember there are consequences for everything, right? And so if we're like saying, if you're making a comparison between bone broth and onions and garlic, for example, there's more violence attached to killing animals. That's one of the reasons why we avoid that, because animals, they feel more than vegetables. There's consciousness everywhere, right? But there's less sin attached to vegetables, to eating vegetables, because there's less consciousness, they feel less pain. And animals, there's more pain. So there's higher sin in taking that. Ultimately, though, we are interested in devotion. And we are taking the vegetarian diet, not because it's vegetarian, but because that's what Krishna likes to eat. So we're taking Krishna's prasad. What Krishna's eating, we're offering it. We're taking his grace, right? The leftovers, the remnants. But going back to this point about consequences, right? There's a greater degree of karma that will be associated with eating something that's connected with animal slaughter. However, higher consideration here is that in the practice of devotion, we're not calculating karma. Karma is no longer a factor here. We're not interested in good karma or bad karma, but we are interested in cultivating devotion. This consideration of karma, it's a calculative practice. But in the practice of bhakti, in the practice of bhakti yoga, Krishna consciousness, we are just trying to think about what is pleasing to the Lord. Krishnanushilanam. We're trying to practice and act according to what is pleasing to the Lord. We're trying to get out of this mentality of calculation of our own loss or gain, good or bad, and so on. So it's a totally different framework, from general religious, spiritual views. So what is favorable? This is mentioned in the 6 limbs of Sharanagati, surrender. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulya vivarjana. What is favorable for my devotional life? I will embrace that. I will accept that. What is unfavorable? I will reject that. That is the real question here. And another thing is that, which I think is important, is that we want to make a distinction between what the ideal is and what we're trying to do and what we're able to do right now. So, somebody may say, oh, I'm trying to follow a pure and clean life. I think that's the best thing, but I'm not there yet. I'm here, but I'm keeping the ideal pure. I'm not going to pollute the ideal. I'm not going to change the ideal to make myself feel better. I have some friends who they want to become devotees, but they're struggling to follow a vegetarian diet. But they want to get there, but they're acknowledging, I'm not there yet, but I'm trying. And in so many things, in my own practices, I would like to wake up at 4 a.m. every day and chant 3 Gayatris a day. And, I managed to get tilak on today. It's a bit faded. Nanda Krishna reminds me. So, but I'm not going to change it and say, oh, actually, we don't need to use tilak. That's old fashioned. I'm just going to do what I want, No, we want to make a distinction. I'm here and that's okay. And I'm trying to go up here and this is the real standard, right? But when we jumble everything up and mix it together, it's not so progressive actually. So we can just accept, like, this is where I am right now. We were just in India and one of our friends in the group, he's very interested. He wants to take initiation actually, but he can't follow a strict vegetarian diet. And one day we were in Calcutta, we stayed in a guest house, a group of us, and he had, eggs, scrambled eggs and toast and coffee. And he confessed to me, oh, I'm sorry. And it was a Kadashi also. It's a day we normally eat more simple. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I just felt like I really needed a regular American breakfast, And I said, I just chuckled. I was happy. I wasn't judging him. I was happy that he was happy and he could have his American breakfast and scrambled eggs, So, like, let's have a healthy acceptance of where we are, and that's okay. There doesn't need to be judgment, and okay, my karmic pile's growing, but that's okay too. That's okay. We're, like what Radhana Rupini said, right? It's so impure. Everything is so impure. If you think about how our devices are made, how much blood is behind it, it's like, this is one reason why I cannot really get on board with the, like the vegan movement and all these things. Like, why pick that? There's so many things, the clothes that we wear, there's so much exploitation everywhere. We can't avoid it. We wouldn't be able to, we would just be paralyzed if we thought about everything that we're eating and everything that we're using in our daily lives, how much exploitation goes behind it. So why are we going to pick out one issue out of so many issues, right? This whole world is so filthy, so nasty. So let's just do something progressive. Let's look forward. And I'm struggling. I'm all sucked into it too. But I'm trying to go forward, and my hope is that I can recognize what is beautiful. I can celebrate what is beautiful and what is pure. And I'm okay with the fact that I'm not there yet. I don't need to change things around to make what I'm doing here and now divine and perfect. Yes, I'm plugging in the fan, Swami Maharaj Prabhupada used to say. I'm creating new reactions for myself, but that's okay. There are some beautiful prayers from some of our gurus, the great saints in our line, saying, like, whatever is supposed to come to me, let it come. Whatever karma, whatever providence has arranged for me, let it come. My only prayer is I can always remember you. May I always remember you. May I have some love for you in my heart. That's my prayer. That's my prayer. And I may be sunk at the lowest level. I may be in the gutter, but I'm looking at the stars. And that's beautiful, actually. And that's authentic. That's perfect. That's a wonderful place to be. So we're just wading in the mud of the mundane world, but there's a rope that's been thrown down to us, trying to catch hold of that. There's a pole star that we're trying to follow. We're still in the mud, but we're moving towards something higher. So I feel like this type of honest recognition of who and what we are, this is very progressive, and very touching. Our gurus will appreciate that. Ultimately, we need grace. How will we invite grace? By showing our naked, dirty selves. Then they will be merciful upon us, and they will be moved by that. And that's how we can actually progress. So those are my thoughts on that subject matter. I hope nobody is offended by them. But that's what I really think. And I hope that will be appreciated. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai. Thank you all so much for your wonderful association.
Thank
for
you
your
so much.
association. Hare Krishna.
See you all
Second,
next
Radha
time.
Ki
Uh,
Jai Gurudev.
Bye.
yeah.
Oh,
Jai.